So I did a video last week about David Price versus Derek Chisora. That fight seems to have gone away slightly. Chisora's trainer Don Charles did a video with IFL TV this week, and it wasn't mentioned. It seemed that Chisora was on a very much extended break, and his future was somewhat uncertain, should I say. In absence of that fight, the Saudis are clearly keen to push David Price. They clearly think he's had enough of a turn fighting journeyman fighters, and there's now talks that he's going to be fighting Mariusz Wach on June the 6th. Now, it's a fight I very much like, actually. For me, Price is a fighter who has very little more to his game other than size and power. And for that reason, Mariusz Wach is a very good test. Firstly, because Mariusz Wach is also an absolute monster. I think he's 6'8", yeah, a really, really big guy. And secondly, he's got one of the most iron chins in the game. I mean, if we look at the beating he took at the hands of Vladimir Klitschko, but stayed the distance, went to 12 rounds, didn't get stopped. With that in mind, it's unlikely that David Price is going to stop him, and it's unlikely with David Price, with the size, that David Price is just going to be able to stand there and throw jabs, because Wach is also a very, very big guy. So I think it's a really, really good test for David Price. And it's interesting, Mariusz Wach would certainly be the best person David Price has ever beaten by quite some way, should David Price be victorious in this fight. Mariusz Wach's best win, obviously he's fought at a higher level than Price, having fought against Vladimir Klitschko, but Mariusz Wach's best win is against Christian Hamer, who, even though I think is an overrated fighter, is still notably better than anyone David Price has ever beaten. So it's an interesting matchup. Two very, very big guys. Mariusz Wach, he hasn't got the highest KO percentage. There's been a few knockouts on his record, like Jason Gavern went 6 rounds with him, for example. I think his last fight went the 10-round distance. He isn't the biggest puncher in the world, but I remember him icing Christian Hamer, leaving him absolutely laid out. So he can clearly punch a little bit. I understand he's had a drug suspension, and potentially, the scope of things like that can affect power, obviously. But I don't think Mariusz Wach is the biggest puncher in the world. Having said that, neither is Tony Thompson, and we all know what happened there. So I think it's an interesting fight, because when you've got two guys who are so big, I don't think Price is just going to be able to rely on his jab like he is against smaller opponents. And I don't think power alone is going to be enough to see David Price get through this. I think he's going to have to, show some skills, show some amateur technical ability, show some output, and more importantly, show some stamina. Because I think Watts is the kind of guy who's going to be coming forward, pressuring, bulldozing for the entire duration of this fight, should it be confirmed. So I like it. I think it's a good test for David Price. I wonder if they're struggling to get good fights for David Price. And the reason I say that is because, for me, this is a relatively risky fight for low reward. I mean, Wach is hardly he's known by us hardcore boxing fans. He's respected within the game, but he's hardly highly ranked within the governing bodies, highly known amongst the general public. A victory over Mariusz Wach is not going to absolutely skyrocket David Price to #1 contender status. It's not going to skyrocket him within the public. And I was thinking, surely a domestic clash would be better for David Price. The likes of a Derek Chisora fight, the likes of an Anthony Joshua fight. These are matchups that are going to make his profile absolutely soar. They're going to be big paydays for him. And at least, if he does take a loss, he takes a loss with a few quid in his pocket. He takes a loss with his name at an all-time high. I don't think the same reward is there from Mariusz Wach. I can't imagine the money's as good, the profile's as good. And I do think there's a reasonable chance that Price could lose this fight. Price has lost the only time he stepped up top 10, top 15 level in Tony Thompson. Now, I'm not saying Wach is quite there, but Wach is certainly a top 30 heavyweight, and he's got huge durability, huge size, and a bit of a punch. So it's a big risk for limited reward. I don't see where this necessarily takes David Price should he win, but I think it's an interesting fight. At this stage, I'm a big David Price skeptic, to be honest with you. I thought he looked awful last time out against Beto Costa Jr. I wouldn't have a strong selection, as I don't think Wach is a world beater. I don't think he's the most dynamic individual. I don't think he's the most, the best mover, the best athlete. But at this stage, on toughness and sort of strength alone, I'm inclined to go Mariusz Wach. We know he's durable, and we know he's going to be there at the end of the fight, still going. Whereas the same cannot be said for David Price. Let me know your thoughts. Keen to discuss. Thanks for watching.